The wounded bear argument that won David victory over Absalom. David fled Absalom because Absalom is wanting to kill him so that he can become king. But Absalom has David's most trusted advisor, Ahithophel, on his side. And Hushai, David's friend, is pretending to be on Absalom's side so that he can spy for David. Now it's time for Absalom to be proactive in searching for David. Ahithophel's advice was to take 12,000 men to pursue David, because Ahithophel wanted to strike David as fast as possible. And 12,000 men would be enough to overwhelm David and his men, and they were tired, but small enough to move quickly before David crossed the Jordan. And speaking of crossing the Jordan, remember Shimei, who was from the household of Saul, who intercepted David while David was on his way to cross the Jordan? The enemy was using Shimei by enticing him so that he can throw insults at David, so that David can fight. And that would have slowed David down, and he wouldn't have been able to cross the Jordan as quickly as he wanted to, which means that Absalom's army would have been able to catch up with David. Ahithophel's advice was that the target is only kill David, because if David died, then the rebellion would have ended right then and there. And also, by sparing the troops, Absalom would have made it easy for the troops to come on his side after he killed David. And Ahithophel's advice overall was to strike David while David was weary and tired. However, you can see God at work, because even though Ahithophel's advice was the best strategy, Absalom summoned Hushai, David's friend, for a second opinion, because Hushai would have known David's weaknesses and his escape routes. And so that is when Hushai used the wounded bear argument, which is the perspective that a man in an isolated situation may potentially be more dangerous or unpredictable than a wild bear. And this was to buy David more time so that David can actually cross the Jordan River. In this argument, Hushai reminded Absalom that David is a veteran warrior, and that David wouldn't be with his troops, and that he would probably be in a cave by himself, waiting to ambush Absalom's army. And Hushai advised Absalom to strike David's men first, because he knew that it would take days to gather an army large enough to come against the troops, versus Ahithophel's advice was to spare the troops and to go only after David with only 12,000 men. So if David was not with his troops while Absalom is attacking the troops, then that gives David enough time to escape. And Hushai played on Absalom's vanity by telling him that he should be the one to lead the army, because he knew that Absalom wanted glory, which was the opposite of Ahithophel's advice, was to send the 12,000 men to go and kill only David. And that would have spared Absalom's life. Back to Hushai's advice, by buying David time, David would have been able to gather his veteran commanders like Joab, Abishai, Ittai. And David's prior experience of running away from Saul, and with his team of veteran commanders, would have given him advantage over Absalom's untrained army.